Tanse, you are listening to As Long as the River Flows, a Keepers of the Water podcast. I'm Jessie Cardinal, Executive Director. As Indigenous people, we are connected to the land, to the water, to the animals, to plants. Everything is connected. Although colonization and residential schools severed that connection, today we are decolonizing. People want to learn their language, the songs, go to ceremony, be back on the land. As an environmental organization, Keepers of the Water is seeing the impacts from industry. Moose are also water beings. The clear cutting and clearing out muskeg destroys their habitat. We realized there was a gap in knowledge. Who is the moose? What is this animal and our relationship to it? Our first speaker is Jeff Wastesicoot from Cross Lake, Manitoba. He's a residential school and 60 scoop survivor. When he returned home, he reclaimed the Nehiyaw way of life. A language consultant and knowledge keeper, Jeff works to preserve and maintain the Nehiyaw identity. He dedicates much of his time to helping people through ceremonies, traditional medicines, and counseling. Jeff presents many forms of the Nehiyaw knowledge through the creation story, rites of passage, star blanket teachings, and spiritual roles and responsibilities.
Within the moose, they go through stages of life too. And these moose are identified under a different name. And same with the bear and also the birds. They all have different names, specific names. The old man told me that when a cow carries a calf inside the belly, this is what they call that calf. And in that term, usipatamachayesis is what they would refer to that, Usipatamachayesis. And I know a lot of these terms you have never heard, a lot of people don't. And that's why we respect that life in there, that we don't take this life of the cow. So when it's born, this is what they call it, omansis. They don't refer to it as a male or a female yet. That's the name that was what was, that the elders talked about. They call it omansis. Once it's a year old, once it reaches the stage of 1 year in the winter time, they refer to that as piponaskos, and it's still, no se piponaskos, nanto yape piponaskos, and that's when they begin to develop these little, the what do you call it? The male, the bull begins to have stubs, but they're not at the mating period yet. In that third year is when they refer to them, and they define them as yapesis, the young bull, and the female would be opisigosho. So again, there's a distinguish of almost like they go through their own stage of rites of passages to become that. It is the fourth year that when they're being able to mate again. So they would refer to that as nu semusa, ago ya peo. And the ones that they would, how we define these ones is two different stages by the bull. And one of the things that we come to understand about them is their antlers, because there's a creation story that is quite lengthy. And they talk about how the moose, that he felt that he had to look after these ones that came from the sky. And it was us, Nehilwak. And he took pity and always looked after them and actually, looked after the people that came from the sky. And those people that came from the sky were us as Nehilwak. And Creator saw this at one time, that you fended for these people too much, I will put a stop to you. So one of the stories that the old people used to tell, if you put your hand here right in the middle, in the center of the bowl, you can actually feel a handprint where Creator put a stop to him. And as they developed maturity, the bulls, they would call this Usaguchi Dewo. And what they refer to that Usaguchi Dewo, the one that's able to win the battles to mate. So that's what they refer to. And these ones really, the lower shovels really are pointed and long. That's what they refer to as Usaguchi Dewo. And then again, no Semusa, that is the one that they refer to as the one that's able to mate. And then the further stage, they go on. After the 7th year, that cow is able to carry 2 to 3 calves. When they're at that year 5, they're only able to carry one calf. We want to preserve these moose at that stage. So Kichino Semusa is, we ask that you don't, we ask our young people not to shoot that one. And how you define a Kichino Semusa? If you ever look at a young bull, and that's, with a cow, that cow, Kichino Semusa, without tower, here's the young bull here standing here, and this cow will stand up much bigger and wider. I wish that I could share more. There's songs that evolve around it. That hump on the back that you have seen on that moose represents the lodges. And there are ceremonial lodges out east that they refer to as Waigan, talking about Waginogan. That's where that term comes from. Even the hump on the buffalo and also the bear, they all have this hump. I think one of the things is to be able to honor the moose. This is why they refer to this as Tapishkagan, that we don't leave this. And one of the things that term Tapishkagan, in return, that we need to do our part by honoring this moose, by hanging that bell, so that another one would be given by the Creator to be descended upon us. Nothing stayed on the ground, because that's where the ground, our Mother Earth, provided this for us. So in order to honor that, we hung this. Even the antlers were not thrown, and no parts were left, even leaving the hide out there and whatnot. And I think one of the greeters that come to us, the very first ones that will arrive at your kill is what they call the gray jay. Some refer to it as whiskey jack. The old language talks about as whiskey cheese is the actual name to that bird, the gray jay. And this was the reason why they call it that, is because this one hung around Wisage, hence the word whiskey cheese. And when they couldn't say that, they translated it into whiskey jack. So again, this was the one that always comes to greet you at your kill. A young cow is actually more brown. And then when you take a look at it, they're almost an odd color to them. A very young moose begins to age when you start seeing the white speckles on it. To also note that the cow begins to have just a little bell after 4 years. It begins to have just a little short growth. And of course, how the males are distinguished is by their antlers. The smaller the antlers, we call them yapes, that's how they are distinguished. And in the winter time, we are still able to hunt the bulls in the winter time, because right now during this time, Nuchi Tuipisim and Ganuchi Itochik, it talks about they have a cycle when they need to come together to reproduce that spirit world. Just like we also, as humans, as Nehewak, we followed a cycle. Now, children are born year round. There was a process for us within that creation story that all children were to be born in the summertime, just like all the animals, because everything was provided for us, the moss and so forth, the warm waters the list goes on and on. One of the things that is occurring to our young people is that they will see a moose on private land and they're unable to hunt it. And I think that's what we need to look at with our own lands is, that non-Indigenous hunters can't hunt here. We have to look at this very cautiously, and that's what our elders are telling us. Question that has always pondered many people why we actually smoke the hide. For once, it smells good, It smells good, but we're just not after the smell, and it refers back to that protection, because we use smudges to takanachi soage kanuna kashika nakaichigate. When we smudge, we actually work with this energy, what they refer to as ishiwene. So a lot of our people used to smoke these hides to protect, And one of the things that I come to understand about our own history, from even smallpox and so forth, the viruses that were airborne, a lot of these things wouldn't reflect to the skin because of that energy cannot stick and survive on smoke hide, And it was a form of a protection. Even our moccasins were smoked so that we did not step on any negative energy out there. So it was a form of protection, spiritual protection to our people. And that's the reason why there was a value on these animals. And they would smoke deer, caribou, elk, and all these things, and we use them as clothing. Today, we have transitioned away from there. I today began to go back to wearing moccasins and so forth. So that's the best scenario that I can give you. That's the reason why we have smoked hide, just like putting on smudge. We call that miyaga shigan. And to further define that miyaga shigan, because that's why we smoke that hide, it's a deterrent when you're unprotected. This energy is composed of molecules, protons, and whatnot, and they actually embed in your skin, which creates a negative energy to you. So in order to maintain that positive energy, we would smoke these hides and really be protected throughout. When we do the offerings, like they differ from region to region. One of the offerings that we do is actually comes from the moose itself, us by taking that life. And we also offer, like, to those other spirits, leaving, the parts. One of the things that we always acknowledge at this time is that raven, that we always leave a piece of meat for them. And those were the offerings that were made from this kill. And generally, today, right now, a lot of people just make the tobacco offerings, And in this process, when we take a life such as a moose, we give thanks right there on the spot. Just a prayer. There's nothing set in stone. It's how you work from the heart. And if you work from here, you can never go wrong.
Hi. Thank you, Jeff, for your teachings and wisdom and giving us another reason to love smoked moose hide. Next up, Kevin Lewis, who is living this. He runs a Cree immersion school and a land-based learning school. He teaches adults and he has a hide tanning camp. So if you want to go and learn all kinds of land-based teachings, Kaniasik Camp offers that. He has so much knowledge to share. Welcome, Kevin.
Oh, that's kahki tamskat na ogo nasko mau an tuhti on Jeff uksi tagutuya. So I'd like to greet everybody. Go ahead. Mamo tao mau tugini kana ya nasko mau gutagisiga mi gusya. Mamo pai sisigi go kichigi go big squatami. So I'd like to thank the creator, thank Jeff, and thank all the organizers first off for allowing us to meet on something pretty special, you know. But it's good. It's good to talk about sort of like the moose. And like this summer, we paddled 200 kilometers. So we're paddling and we start seeing tracks. So now we're starting to take accountability of moose population. We need to sustain our moose. I've been in the places where they can't shoot moose, and my heart goes out. And I'm like, and at home here, why we went down this crazy path? Why we went down was because we were saying, boy, and we were pointing like this. Look, and I was having this discussion with my kukumo. I was going, geez, these kids, they're just shooting. It's so easy to shoot. And I'm pointing and I'm pointing. And then she goes, yeah, we just you're pointing. It's easy to point, but there's three pointing right back at you. Oh, so that humble pie tasted really good, and coming from her, so three fingers were pointing right back at me. You know, instead of blaming, we got to do something about it, right? That's where the genesis, or that's where the mandate came from, was from our elders. And like we have elders that are standing right now at our band office trying to figure out, okay, what's our next move, you know? And like my prayers and my, listening to our elders as knowledge keepers, as getting direction. And when I'm in trouble or when I'm feeling, mentally tired, you start that's who I run to. I don't run anywhere else. I'll go to my elders. I'm like, okay, I got a situation here. Can you tell me, And we have our medicines, we have our smudges, we have our teas, we have such good stuff. We're so rich, and especially around the idea of moose, right? So now I'm gonna pull out my my trumpet. So this one's kind of a little bit of sexy call, okay? All right. Okay, you hear that one? All right. So this one's a bull. Right? So that's a younger bull, that one. No, I hardly talk about a lot of my hunting stories, but we used to hunt all over the place here, and we still do, but now it's like this other generation that's like their first time hunters now, right? And the first hunt, if you're ever gonna shoot something or get something, even bow hunting has to come up again, right? We've got to start doing like that. But ganagwatso is where the work starts happening. That's the hard work. That's the hard part. So, and then my dad, he cuts off that umumatayo, that bell, and he says, nah, dogota. So I take it, I'm like, okay, and I put it down. And then so after a while, not right away, don't ask right away. It's like, why? So I go, Tanigam maya, kagota nam maya umumatayo. And then he said, Piega matsumuni tagihtig, he says, eh? And I'm like, oh, wow. So the translation is, it's worth one story. So I'm like, one story, geez. And then again, you're not gonna ask what? I don't understand. You're talking like Yoda. I don't understand you, Dad. And then so anyway, I start asking other people, and I start asking him again. And then sooner or later, he unfolds this beautiful story. So we have just to add to Jeff's story. There's I named Ukihtaugamic earlier. There's a warrior man, and this is like all due respect, smudged, and Nyanims was his name. Nyanims raised these warriors called Ugitawag and Ugitawskwag, and then they made this Ugitawgamik. Beautiful. And anyways, this moose was not really nice to us in the past. You know, it was almost kind of like that skunk, kind of like a bully, and would run over us, would run, because this come, you know, if there was teepees or lodges there, whatever they were, they would come and just blow us over. And then pretty soon that Nyanims was sent there, and he said, "You got to go deal with that moose, because that moose is just gonna kill us, and go stick up for those guys." So he went over there, and then Mama Moses Squan that Jeff was talking about, Moses Squan, he held it, and that bull was charging him, held it in the middle of the nose, and then put it in that handprint there, right, and held him dead, stopped him dead in his tracks. And then from there he said, "Gagutamat na mamumatayo." Right? If you just start treating us right, and we'll need you in the future. We will need you in the future, and we'll respect you. So we'll hang that mamumatayo, gutamatnan, magan minama mususkwan, nigwamanikan ngasta nano maugi. So that's the lead soup. This takes long years, like a lot of years to get me just that little bits of little stories from all these old men, old women. So we have to, like, with all due respect, I know there's lots of people all over the place there, and sometimes you can only talk to them virtually, but like I hope I don't say too much online like this, but just to give you little bits and pieces of how rich we are, just to give you an idea, just like an intro. But like, we have lots of knowledge holders, we have lots of singers, we have lots of great, beautiful guhums, lots of people, like, we have access to that, but we need to go back to those teachings to make sure that population, that moose population is at a healthy state, right? And when we lose sight of that moose, that four-legged, when we start going, like, looking one way, we jeopardize everything on the world. But when we go back to the four-leggeds and we start looking and focusing on how that relationship is, because these are old treaties that we have. These are treaties. We have treaties with other two-leggeds, but we have treaties with these other flyers, four-leggeds, moose is one of them, buffalo, bear, all these different things. We have treaties with them. And those are the laws that Jeff was talking about earlier, and we need to not forget them, but relearn them. Go back to our knowledge holders and see how you can create maybe, like, to use today's words, policies, but how do you implement those good policies? How do you use Canadian law and traditional law, hereditary chieftainship with contemporary chieftainships, right? So we have lots of work to do. So that's why it takes everybody, and it's about identity. It's about reconciliation, bridge building, and listening to our stories and respecting our stories, and not talking about our family like being tricksters or myths or things that are too crazy to be true. No, these are our stories, and these are our relationships here. To kick everybody into gear, to start talking about like food security, food sovereignty, and taking into account the importance of healthy eating, moving. It's a lot of work when you're hunting. It's a lot of work. Like the initial harvest, followed by taking it out and then processing it yourself. So you're doing the processing, and you're actually doing also, you're examining the food. Is the liver, is it good? You're just doing the inspection. You're acting as an inspector. You're also, like, the complexity can go on and on. Like, some of these hunters, these men, these women, they know where to cut on the joint. So you don't even need a saw or anything like that. You just need a mukumana, a knife. And so, like, to get it to that level, and then also how to skin that moose is really important as well, for the drum makers, for the hide tanners.
Thank you, Kevin. What a great discussion. Thank you all for listening. This is As Long as the River Flows. You can listen and watch the complete webinar on the Keepers of the Water YouTube channel.